1. The chilling confession of a 5-year-old. Police Chief Mike Thompson nearly choked on his morning coffee, the bitter liquid burning his throat as the words, delivered with unnerving calm, echoed through the quiet police station. 5-year-old Kesha, her small legs swinging idly from the chair, clutched a worn teddy bear. Her voice was soft, devoid of the theatrical flourishes typical of a child spinning fantastical tales. She spoke with the frightening naturalness of someone recounting what they'd had for lunch. "Daddy isn't dead, he's under the floorboards." Then, with a tilt of her head, she added, "Daddy is down there where Mommy put the new tiles." Sergeant Davis, engrossed in his paperwork, scoffed from behind his desk. "Kids have such vivid imaginations," he muttered, not even bothering to look up. She probably saw a horror movie. But Thompson, a veteran of 20 years on the force, felt a prickle of unease. He looked at Kesha's eyes, large and serious, devoid of the dreamy, fantastical light of a child making up stories. These were the eyes of someone who had seen something they should never have witnessed. He recognized that look. He'd seen it in the eyes of trauma victims, in the haunted gazes of adults who had faced unspeakable horrors. But never, not once in his career, had he seen it in such a young child. A moment later, Mrs. Williams, a 67-year-old black woman from Kesha's neighborhood, bustled into the station, her face etched with worry. She was the one who had brought Kesha in, her concern a palpable aura around her. "Marcus Johnson has been missing for 4 days, Deputy," she insisted, her voice dropping to a low, urgent murmur. "It's not like him to disappear like this, leaving his daughter behind. That man wouldn't even go to the grocery store without telling someone where he was going." Thompson knew Marcus by sight, a respected civil engineer in the community, always punctual for his daughter's school appointments, the kind of father who carried photos of his little girl in his wallet and never missed a school presentation. The contrast with his wife, Vanessa Johnson, was stark, like night and day. Vanessa had appeared at the police station only once, filing a missing person report about her husband with the same detached ease as someone renewing their driver's license. A well-dressed white woman, she spoke with a condescending tone Thompson recognized all too well, the voice of someone who had always been taken seriously because of the color of her skin and the size of her bank account. "My husband sometimes travels for work without telling me," Vanessa had said, adjusting her designer handbag. "It's no big deal. Marcus is unpredictable." The pause before unpredictable had sounded as false as a counterfeit bill, but Thompson hadn't paid much attention to it at the time. "Detective," Mrs. Williams lowered her voice again, looking around nervously as if the walls themselves had ears. "There's something I didn't tell you." She recounted a chilling detail. "The night Marcus disappeared, I heard screams coming from the house. Strange noises, as if someone was dragging something heavy across the floor. And the next day, a renovation company showed up, working late into the night." Thompson felt a cold chill run down his spine. "What kind of renovations?" he pressed, his voice tight. "The kitchen floor," Mrs. Williams replied, the irony in her voice so thick it could be cut with a knife. "Vanessa said it was a surprise for Marcus when he got back from his trip." The detective vaguely remembered Vanessa mentioning a small renovation during her statement, but it had seemed like an insignificant detail at the time. Now, looking at Kesha, Thompson felt a crushing sense of having missed something criminally important in that initial conversation. The girl was still drawing on the paper he had given her. It appeared to be a bedroom, with a small, distorted figure of a man lying under a checkered floor. The details were disturbingly accurate for a 5-year-old. "Kesha," Thompson said, crouching down to the child's height, modulating his voice to sound as gentle as possible. "Where exactly is Daddy?" "In the new kitchen," she replied without hesitation, her eyes wide and earnest. "Mommy said it was our secret, but Daddy is very cold down there. He cried very loudly before he went quiet forever." Mrs. Williams covered her mouth with a horrified gasp, and even Sergeant Davis finally looked up from his paperwork, his casual demeanor replaced by a dawning realization of the absolute gravity of the situation. "Kesha, sweetheart," Thompson continued, his voice controlled, "can you tell me what happened the night Daddy went quiet?" The girl looked at her teddy bear as if asking the toy for permission to tell the secret. "Mommy hit Daddy with a big pot from the kitchen," she recounted, her voice still unnervingly calm. "Daddy fell to the floor and didn't get up. Then Mom cried a lot and said it was his fault for being stubborn and not listening. A deathly silence fell over the police station. Thompson felt his heart pounding in his chest. "And then what did Mom do?" he prompted, his voice barely a whisper. "She took the blue sheet from my room and wrapped Daddy all up in it. Then she dug a big hole in the kitchen and put him in it. Then the men came with the new floor tiles and covered everything up." Kesha spoke as if she were describing her grandmother's cake recipe, her naturalness making it all the more disturbing. What Thompson didn't know was that at that very moment, 40 miles away, Vanessa Johnson was in her private lawyer's office, calmly explaining why she needed to speed up the life insurance process for her missing husband. She had no idea that Marcus Johnson had discovered something about his wife's cryptocurrency investments that was worth much more than his own life. Much less did she imagine that Kesha, despite her 5 years of age, was keeping secrets that would turn this routine disappearance case into the biggest criminal twist the city had ever seen. As he looked closely at the girl's drawing again, Thompson noticed a detail that made his blood run cold. She had drawn not only a man under the floor but also small rectangular bags next to him, as if she knew exactly what else was buried in that hastily renovated kitchen. Thompson knew he had something much bigger than a simple missing person case on his hands. 2 hours after Kesha's chilling revelation, Chief Thompson was on the phone with Judge Morrison, fighting to secure a search warrant for the Johnson residence. "Mike, are you asking me to authorize digging up a family's backyard based on the testimony of a 5-year-old? The judge's skeptical voice crackled over the phone. "That won't hold up for 5 minutes in court." Thompson felt a surge of frustration. "Sir, we have a child who has described specific details about a crime, a suspicious renovation carried out immediately after the disappearance, and a wife who is displaying an unusual coldness for the situation. And do you have any physical evidence? Adult witnesses? Anything besides the word of a traumatized little girl?" The judge's skepticism was a familiar wall Thompson had faced too many times when dealing with wealthy, influential families. 20 years on the force, and the bureaucracy remained an insurmountable obstacle. Thompson hung up the phone harder than he intended. Just then, Sergeant Davis approached his desk, a grim expression on his face. "Chief, I just got an interesting call. Vanessa Johnson was at her lawyer's office this morning. It looks like she wants to speed up her husband's life insurance claim." "How convenient," Thompson massaged his temples, a familiar headache beginning to throb. "How long has Marcus been missing?" 4 days, and she's already chasing money." At that precise moment, the station phone rang. Davis answered, and after a few seconds, covered the receiver with his hand. "It's her. Vanessa Johnson. She wants to talk to you." Thompson took a deep breath before answering, forcing a calm tone into his voice. "Deputy Thompson, Sheriff." "This is Vanessa Johnson." Her voice was controlled, but Thompson, with years of experience, detected an underlying tension she couldn't completely hide. "I heard my daughter was there today." "Your daughter is fine, Mrs. Johnson. She was worried about her father." "Kesha has a very active imagination, Sheriff. I hope you didn't take a little girl's fantasies too seriously." The condescending tone was unmistakable, sharp as a finely honed blade. Thompson felt his pulse quicken. "What kind of fantasies specifically?" "Oh, you know how kids are. Always making up stories about monsters under the bed, people buried in the backyard." Vanessa let out an awkward, brittle laugh. "It's just her way of coping with her father's temporary absence." "Interesting that you mentioned people buried, Mrs. Johnson. Your daughter was very specific about the location." There was a long, chilling pause on the other end of the line. "Deputy, I hope you're not considering disturbing a grieving family based on the fantasies of a traumatized child. My lawyer would be very disappointed in such an unprofessional approach." The veiled threat was crystal clear. Thompson knew the game. Influential families always had expensive lawyers ready to turn police investigations into bureaucratic nightmares. "Just doing my job, Have a nice day." After she hung up, Thompson stared at the phone for a long moment. In his career, he had learned to read people, and Vanessa Johnson had just confirmed his deepest suspicions in the worst possible way. No one spontaneously mentions people buried unless they have a very specific reason for it being on their mind. Davis approached again. "Chief, there's one more thing. I got Marcus's phone records for the last 30 days. Interesting. He made several calls to a divorce lawyer the week before he disappeared." Thompson felt a crucial piece of the puzzle click into place. Marcus was planning to get a divorce. "And there's more," Davis continued. "A quick check of the county records. The house is in his name, inherited from his father. If he died without a will, it would go to his wife. But if there was a divorce, she would lose everything." Thompson leaned back in his chair, the grim picture becoming crystal clear. Financial motive, opportunity during the renovation, and now they knew she had urgency. The truth, however painful, was beginning to surface, revealing a chilling domestic drama far more sinister than a simple missing person case. The contrast between Vanessa's calm facade and the escalating evidence painted a chilling portrait of betrayal and cold-blooded calculation. At that moment, as Thompson was connecting the chilling dots of financial motive and impending divorce, Mrs. Williams re-entered the station, her presence a quiet disruption, accompanied by Kesha. The little girl, her innocent trust unwavering, ran straight to Thompson as if he were a long-lost friend. "Detective Thompson," she exclaimed, climbing onto the chair next to his desk. "Mom is mad at me for talking about Dad." "Why is she mad, sweetie?" Thompson asked, his heart sinking. This innocent child had no idea of the immense gravity of the situation she had unleashed with her brutal honesty. "She said they're going to take her away now, and I'll be all alone. But I told her you seemed nice, and you won't let that happen." Kesha's words, so artless and trusting, twisted a knot in Thompson's gut. "Kesha, do you remember anything else about the night your daddy was quiet?" he pressed, his voice gentle. The girl thought for a moment, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Mommy cried a lot after that, and she talked on the phone with a man who called her my love." "Daddy never called her that." Mrs. Williams and Thompson exchanged meaningful glances. Another insidious piece of the puzzle fell into place, an extramarital affair. "And do you know who that man on the phone was?" Thompson asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know his name, but he came to the house once when Dad was at work. Mom said he was Uncle Richard, but Dad doesn't have a brother." Kesha swung her legs in her chair, then added, with devastating innocence, "And they kissed on the mouth, like Mom and Dad used to do before they started fighting all the time." Thompson closed his eyes for a moment, a wave of profound weariness washing over him. A 5-year-old had provided more useful, damning information in 2 casual conversations than many detectives could unearth in weeks of painstaking investigation. Kesha's innocence was both a blessing and a curse. She saw everything but didn't understand the devastating implications of what she had witnessed. While Vanessa Johnson was probably at home, coldly calculating how to expedite the life insurance process and plan her new life with her lover, a brave little girl had just handed justice the precise information it needed to unravel a premeditated murder. What the arrogant widow didn't know was that every veiled threat and every elaborate lie only dug her grave deeper, while the innocent truth of a child became the most powerful weapon Thompson had ever held in his hands. Thompson knew that taking on an influential family like the Johnsons would require more than just police intuition. It would demand a surgical strategy. While Vanessa Johnson probably slept peacefully, confident in her expensive lawyers and political connections, the deputy spent the night building a case she would never see coming. "Davis, I need you to do something unofficial for me," Thompson said, lowering his voice in the empty station. "Do you know anyone at the telecom company who can help us with cell phone location records?" Davis smiled mischievously. "My brother-in-law works there. What kind of unofficial information do you need?" "Marcus Johnson's cell phone location on the night of his disappearance. And if possible, data from the tower closest to the Johnson home." Thompson scribbled notes in a notebook he kept away from the official files. "I want to know if his phone was stationary in any specific location." Meanwhile, Mrs. Williams had become an unexpectedly valuable ally. The retired lady had something Thompson desperately needed: time, patience, and the invisible ability that only elderly neighbors seemed to possess, to observe everything without being noticed. "Sheriff," she called mid-morning, whispering into the phone. "Vanessa is packing 2 big suitcases, and that man Kesha mentioned, Uncle Richard, is helping her." Thompson felt his adrenaline spike. "Can you see his license plate?" "I already wrote it down," she reported, her voice a low conspiratorial hum. "And there's more. They're taking boxes out of the basement. Boxes that look too heavy for two people to carry with such difficulty." "Mrs. Williams, you're a better detective than half my officers," Thompson smiled for the first time in days. "Keep watching, but keep your distance. If they realize they're being watched." "Sheriff, I have 70 years of experience watching people. They won't notice me." The confident pause in the conversation was interrupted by Davis, who returned with information that would make Vanessa Johnson completely rethink her arrogance. "Thompson, my brother-in-law got the data. Marcus Johnson's cell phone was stationary at his residence from 10 p.m. until 3 a.m. on the day of the disappearance. After that, the signal just died. It was exactly the time Kesha said she witnessed the argument and assault." Thompson closed his eyes, feeling the final pieces of the macabre puzzle fall perfectly into place. "And you were able to identify Uncle Richard?" "Richard Steinberg. 42 years old, financial advisor. And here's where it gets interesting. He has a cryptocurrency company registered under the name of guess who? Vanessa Johnson." "Exactly. A shell company registered 3 months before Marcus disappeared. They've been planning an exit for a long time." At that moment, Thompson had an idea that would make all the difference. He called Dr. Patricia Moore, a renowned child psychologist and one of the few people he trusted completely to handle sensitive cases. "Pat, I need a favor. I have a 5-year-old girl who witnessed something traumatic. She's already spoken to me, but I need someone with your experience to validate her statement so that it's irrefutable in court. Mike, you know that statements from children this young are rarely accepted as evidence. This is different, Pat. This child has details that only an eyewitness could have. And if we can document it properly, with your expertise, we have a real chance of getting justice." Dr. Moore agreed to meet Kesha that afternoon. Meanwhile, Thompson prepared his riskiest move, confronting Vanessa Johnson before she could get away. But this time, he would come armed with questions she would never expect. "Davis, let's pay Mrs. Johnson a social call. Nothing official, just check in to see how she's handling her husband's disappearance." Thompson's smile had a predatory quality. Sometimes, the most arrogant people make the stupidest mistakes when they feel too secure. As they drove to the Johnson home, Thompson knew he was playing a dangerous game. Vanessa had probably already called her lawyers, but there was one thing that all the money in the world couldn't buy: the innocent truth of a child who hadn't yet learned to lie. What Vanessa Johnson didn't know was that every veiled threat, every condescending smile, and every attempt to use privilege to escape justice only fueled the determination of a man who had dedicated his entire life to protecting the vulnerable from the powerful. And when the truth finally came out, no lawyer would be expensive enough to contain the damage. Arriving at the Johnson home, Thompson noticed the 2 large suitcases already loaded into Richard's car, and a grim smile touched his lips. Guilty people, he thought, always make the same mistake. They believe they're smarter than everyone around them. This time, their arrogance would be the very instrument of their downfall, and justice would come through the honest words of a brave little girl who refused to keep secrets about the father she loved. Thompson knocked on the Johnsons' door with the quiet confidence of someone holding all the winning cards. When Vanessa opened it, her fake, practiced smile vanished the moment she saw the determined, unyielding expression on the chief's face. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm glad to find you still here," Thompson said, his voice calm, almost conversational. "From what I can see, you're getting ready for a trip." He discreetly pointed to the suitcases in Richard's car, where Richard quickly, clumsily, hid behind the curtain, a picture of nervous guilt. "Just a long weekend to clear our heads while we wait for news about Marcus." Vanessa tried to keep her tone casual, but her hands, Thompson noticed, were shaking slightly. "Interesting, especially considering that I just discovered something fascinating about your husband's cell phone." Thompson slowly, deliberately, took an envelope from his pocket. "Cell tower data shows that his phone was stationary here at your house from 10 p.m. until exactly 3 a.m. on the day of his disappearance. After that, the signal dropped completely." Vanessa's face paled visibly, all color draining from her cheeks. He must have forgotten his charger, she stammered, a desperate, pathetic attempt at an excuse. Funny, Thompson continued, his voice a low, dangerous growl. Because Kesha told me that was exactly when she witnessed you attacking Marcus with a cast-iron skillet. He watched every micro-expression on Vanessa's face, every flicker of fear and dawning horror. And there's more. We found your shell cryptocurrency company, registered jointly with Richard Steinberg. At that precise moment, Richard, no longer able to hide, appeared at the door, clearly agitated. Vanessa, who is that? He blurted out. Richard Steinberg, I presume? The Uncle Richard Kesha mentioned. Thompson smiled, a cold, humorless expression. Interesting how a 5-year-old can be more honest than 2 adults with college degrees. You can't prove anything. Vanessa tried to regain her composure, but her voice already sounded desperate, brittle. It's just speculation based on the fantasies of a traumatized child. Thompson laughed darkly, a sound devoid of mirth. Speculation, Mrs. Johnson. While you thought you were being clever, Mrs. Williams has been documenting your every move, including the heavy boxes you took out of the basement earlier today. The blood drained completely from Richard's face. Vanessa, you said no one was paying attention, he shrieked, his voice cracking. Shut up. Vanessa screamed, completely losing control for the first time, her carefully constructed facade shattering into 1,000 pieces. And there's more, Thompson continued, relishing every second of the devastating revelation. We've gained access to the bank records of your shell company. Suspicious transfers, money disappearing from Marcus's joint account, and attempts to speed up the life insurance. He stepped closer, his presence commanding. Did you really believe you could murder a man, bury him in his own home, and still profit from it? Richard began to sweat visibly, his eyes darting frantically between Thompson and Vanessa. Vanessa, you told me he had agreed to an amicable divorce. You lied about everything. You idiot. Vanessa turned on Richard like a cornered animal, all pretense of sophistication gone. You believed a man like Marcus would split his inheritance with me. He was going to leave me penniless. Thompson watched the pair collapse with a grim satisfaction. Arrogant people, he knew, always destroy themselves when the pressure mounts. You know what impresses me the most? Thompson continued, his voice calm, cutting through their rising panic. You completely underestimated a 5-year-old child. You thought you could manipulate Kesha into keeping quiet about her own father's murder. What kind of monsters do that? Vanessa was shaking with a mixture of rage and despair. That girl doesn't understand anything. She doesn't know what she saw. She knew enough to lead us straight to her father's body, Thompson retorted, his voice rising, and she knew enough to describe exactly how you killed Marcus with an iron pot while he had his back turned. Thompson moved closer, his proximity a silent, overwhelming force. And the most ironic part, if you had treated Kesha with love and care, she might never have spoken. But you terrorized her so much that she trusted strangers over her own mother. Richard began to cry uncontrollably, his shoulders heaving. I didn't know she was going to kill anyone. I just helped with the money. You helped bury the body, Richard. Kesha saw you digging with her mother. Thompson showed no mercy. And now you're both going to get to know the justice system you tried to cheat. Vanessa made one last desperate attempt. You can't trust the word of a child against 2 respectable adults. Respectable adults. Thompson laughed openly, a harsh, dismissive sound. A murderer and her accomplice who tried to profit from the crime. And what about the child? She gave us information that led directly to physical evidence, telecommunications data, and financial records. Kesha's innocent truth was more reliable than all of your elaborate lies. At that moment, sirens began to wail in the distance, growing rapidly louder. Thompson had called for backup before arriving. The most pathetic thing of all, Thompson concluded, as the police cars pulled up, lights flashing, is that you destroyed a family, traumatized an innocent child, and ruined your own lives out of pure greed. Marcus Johnson was a decent man who deserved much better than a murderous wife and a cowardly death. Vanessa collapsed in tears of despair when she realized there was no way out. Richard tried to run, but Thompson had already blocked all escape routes. The arrogance that had sustained them for days had completely evaporated, replaced by the raw, animalistic panic of those who finally understood that justice had come, swift and absolute, at the hands of a brave little girl who refused to keep secrets about the father she loved. As the handcuffs clicked around their wrists, one question hung in the air. How would Kesha react when she learned that her courage had brought justice to her father and, in doing so, profound freedom to herself? 6 months after the trial that had gripped the city, turning whispers into national headlines, Thompson sat in his office. He was a man accustomed to the grim realities of his profession, but a phone call he received that afternoon made him smile for the first time in weeks. It was Mrs. Williams, now Kesha's legal guardian, and her voice radiated a warmth that seeped through the phone line. "Sheriff, you need to know," she began. "Kesha is thriving at her new school. The psychologist said she's recovering beautifully. And yesterday, she asked me if she could write you a letter." Thompson looked out his window, remembering the brave little girl who had changed everything with her brutal honesty. "And how is she handling everything?" he asked, genuinely curious about the child who had become a symbol of resilience. "She understands that her mother did something very wrong, but she doesn't hold any anger." Mrs. Williams' voice broke slightly. "Yesterday, she said to me, 'Grandma Williams, I helped Daddy not be forgotten, right?'" The woman paused, her voice thick with emotion. "That child has a wisdom that many adults will never have." Meanwhile, at the state women's penitentiary, Vanessa Johnson was discovering a new, brutal reality. Privilege and money bought no respect among inmates. Sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, she spent her days in isolation, shunned even by other prisoners who despised someone who would kill her own husband and traumatize a child. Richard Steinberg was no luckier. Sentenced to 25 years as an accomplice, he lost not only his freedom but also the entire fortune he had helped Vanessa steal from Marcus. The cryptocurrency investments that had seemed so smart evaporated when authorities froze all the shell company's accounts. The irony was a bitter, satisfying taste. 2 sophisticated adults who thought they were too clever to be caught by a 5-year-old ended up destroyed by the very innocence they tried to exploit. Dr. Patricia Moore, the child psychologist who had meticulously documented Kesha's trauma, became a fierce advocate for the rights of child victims of domestic crime. "The Kesha Johnson case changed how we treat child testimony," she explained in lectures across the country. "A child who hasn't learned to lie can be the most reliable witness there is." Thompson often received calls from other detectives, seeking his advice on similar cases. The Kesha Protocol, as it became known, established clear guidelines for investigating crimes based on children's accounts, saving dozens of families from similar horrific situations. The house where Marcus was murdered stood empty for months, a silent, grim monument to a family's tragedy. Until Mrs. Williams suggested something that made Thompson smile: "Why don't we turn it into a community center? A place where kids can play and feel safe to speak up when something is wrong." The proposal was unanimously approved by the City Council. The Marcus Johnson Center has since become a powerful symbol of how a child's truth can transform tragedy into hope, a vibrant hub of safety and connection in the very place where evil had once resided. On the first anniversary of Marcus's death, Thompson visited the grave with Kesha and Mrs. Williams. Kesha, now 6, placed bright yellow flowers, her father's favorite, on the grave. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice soft but clear, "everyone knows you were a good man now. No one will forget." Thompson knelt beside Kesha, his gaze steady. "You know, you're a hero, right? Because of your courage, your father got justice, and you're safe." Kesha smiled with that ancient wisdom that some children develop after weathering unimaginable storms. "I just told the truth, Uncle Thompson. Grandma Williams taught me that lying hurts more than the truth." Months later, Thompson learned that Vanessa had tried to appeal her sentence, arguing that a child's testimony should not have been considered. The request was denied in less than 24 hours. The judge's response was unequivocal: "Credibility has no age. This child has shown more integrity and courage than many adults who have come before this court." The last news about Richard came through the newspapers. He had lost his mind in prison, repeating obsessively, "The girl knew. The girl knew everything," until he was transferred to a psychiatric ward. Thompson kept in his desk drawer a photo Mrs. Williams had taken. Kesha, smiling brightly on a swing at the community center playground, a swing that had been donated in memory of her father. Whenever a difficult, morally ambiguous case landed on his desk, he would look at that photo and remember. Sometimes, justice doesn't come in grand pronouncements or swift, violent vengeance. It comes through the most unlikely voices, whispered by an innocent heart, proving itself more powerful than all the elaborate lies concocted by corrupt hearts. The arrogance of Vanessa Johnson, who believed she could manipulate a child and cheat the system, had become her own social and legal death sentence. And Kesha, the little girl who just wanted her daddy not to be forgotten, proved that the greatest victories often come from the smallest, bravest warriors. Deep research. Canvas.